And that's that. 2019 is over. So like we all love to do, it's time for a little list making action. So today I present to you my top 10 games of 2019. What's going on, everybody? It's Ghost Robo. How are you all doing? Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed 2019 and let me know in the comments down below your favorite games of the year and what you think of my list. Before we get to the 10 titles, let's talk about the year a bit as a whole. I feel like 2019 was a weak year for games. Yes, I know some people will agree. Maybe some of their favorite games ever came out, some that they spent an ungodly amount of time in. But for me personally, this year was soft. And I think it's kind of expected given that we're gearing up for next gen next year. And a lot of the big franchises kind of found themselves in strange places, and in some ways those strange places may have been missing entirely, like an Assassin's Creed that took the year off. But when you look at Game of the Year lists, you kind of know what to expect, and for me that signifies not the best year. Diversity in top choices, I think, highlights a year that had a lot of variety and a lot of high quality variety. But 2019, the games that you're seeing on top of people's favorites are pretty predictable, pretty expected, and in general the lists are incredibly comparable across the board. I feel like for me personally, there weren't a lot of games that I was really excited about, not a lot of games that spoke to me. It was a bit of a strange calendar cycle for me because normally I'm much more enthusiastic about the release docket, and this year it just didn't grab me. And titles that I expected to grab me really greatly, like Days Gone and Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, just didn't do it. And you all know I'm not the biggest fan of games as services and these cooperative multiplayer affairs, or the titles where they try to pack 100 hours of gameplay into one simple idea, or the titles where they take one simple idea and try to stretch it into 10,000 ideas instead of just nailing that one idea. Genre bending and genre blending is cool sometimes, but maybe you should just try to do something really good. One thing, two things, and nail it. So some of my favorite properties didn't pop up this year. There were delays and there were disappointments, but there still were 10 games that I really did enjoy. And frankly, this list was pretty easy to put together because outside of these 10, I didn't like a whole lot. Now, I didn't play everything, and it is just an opinion, so don't be too angry, but let's kick things off with a mobile game. Number 10 is Card of Darkness from Apple Arcade. Don't worry, it's the only mobile title on the list, but hey, games are games at this point. None of mine are physical. It's so weird to be in a year where I can't even hold up. I think I have 2 of the games on this list in physical capacity. Everything else is digital, and that's so strange from a decade ago when every single game I had was physical. But obviously you can't own Card of Darkness physically. It's part of Apple Arcade, which I think was actually a super strong service. In comparison to some of the other services that launched this year, it gets a thumbs up from me. And Card of Darkness has insane creativity with its really goofy art. It's one of those visual styles that isn't superb, but that's what makes it special. It's like something you or I could draw when we're playing a Jackbox Party Pack game, and that's what makes it really appealing. It's quirky, it's fun, it's clever, and the game behind it is fantastic. It's this idea of trying to move through this card battlefield to reach the other side, and you're constantly doing little math numbers in your head, but not too much where it's an insane brain-burning analysis paralysis puzzler, more of a quick puzzler, and you can always restart if you screw up. And the way that the game expands and evolves throughout different attacks, different ways to move through the cards, and crazy enemies that can eat each other or convert each other or disappear entirely. It's a really unique adventure, and one that does get difficult as you near the top of that map tower, but I loved it throughout. Card of Darkness, it made my Apple Arcade subscription worth it for that title alone. Number 9 is Zelda Link's Awakening. Now, out of all the Nintendo titles that released this year, I would never have guessed that Link's Awakening would be one of the only Switch games to hit my list. Well, at least from Nintendo. There are a few more down the line, but Zelda Link's Awakening is an old game, and it sure feels like it, and I think that's why I ended up loving it. Against the odds, it really did appeal to me, even though I thought it was strange that Nintendo was taking a Game Boy title and basically just glossing over it with some nice new paint, and boy, is that really expensive, nice paint. I love the look of Link's Awakening. But I think as much as I resist these remakes, I end up liking a lot of them because they call back to a time where I felt games appealed more to my personal likes and dislikes. It's not just bringing a title back from an era long ago, it's bringing a game design philosophy back, and I like Link's Awakening. Linear single-player progression. There's a little flexibility there, but for the most part, you're going from dungeon to dungeon, and as much as people are looking forward to Breath of the Wild 2, I really hope that it brings back some of the old, tried and true stylings and design choices. I love Link's Awakening. The hint system with the little telephone, the quirky characters, the animal village where Marin goes and sings. It's not an incredibly difficult game, but the weapons are cool, the bosses are intriguing, and in general, the map is something that you kind of become really familiar with, and I think that's always fun, even if it's not super expansive or super crazy. I do love the creativity in bringing the crossover characters from the Mario universe into Zelda. I wish Nintendo would do more of this. I don't understand how they haven't across their history. They're really resistant and like to keep their properties in their narrow lane, but here, you got Goombas in side-scrolling Zelda segments, and to me, that gives it thumbs up by itself. Link's Awakening, I think it's a really good time and a really nice game, especially for Switch Lite. It's the perfect portable punch for 2019. Number 8 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I have not been into the Call of Duties for a number of years, and frankly, I didn't get into Modern Warfare as much as I would have liked. Multiplayer is so hard for me to break into at a level where I want to spend dozens and dozens and dozens of hours. It's like Evolve ruined me. I had so much fun with that. Nothing else kind of comes close on the multiplayer front, and frankly, I just don't have time to dedicate. I'm changing, I'm growing, I'm evolving, and that was another thing that made this year and this list interesting. At now the ripe age of 30, I feel different about games, and I feel different about how I play them and when I play them and why I'm playing them. If it doesn't have something that is stupendous, I kind of might rather just interact with my family or friends. And maybe that's weird, but I love games still. I just want them to mean something much more than be a distraction. I don't know. At least that's where I'm at. But Modern Warfare's campaign was incredible. I love that roller coaster ride. I thought they nailed the intensity without going overboard. There was a point where they involved kids, and I wish they hadn't, because that did make me uncomfortable and kind of not like certain things about the experience. But that aside, it's phenomenal. It is so visceral and realistic while still having, grounded respect, I feel. I like the storyline. The gunplay is fantastic. The levels were diverse. And I really enjoyed that they kind of powered you through more corridor-based gameplay. It wasn't like a Monster Closet experience, but they didn't try to do this massive epic scope, epic battlefield. I feel like a lot of military shooters these days try to do that. Most of them this generation want to be as big as possible, and I would much rather engage in a limited encounter that has unique level design and requires strategy and sort of very in-your-face intense moments like Modern Warfare, as opposed to the more Battlefield styling where they try to have a gigantic, like, oh my god, there's a million things going on, look at the planes in the distance. Like, I kind of want to be in charge of the engagement, and I want to have it feel more like a tight campaign, not just I'm another cog in the machine, at least for me. And, the modern FPS has kind of been not all that prevalent. If you look, we don't get a whole lot of them. There was a time where that was all we got, and now we don't, and so I respect Modern Warfare for being an awesome one of those. The multiplayer is super fun as well. I just didn't have a ton of time with it. If I did, it probably would have been higher than 8, but I feel good about putting it at 8, and I'm proud of the Call of Duty team for creating a beautiful game that was a whole lot of fun. Can't wait to see where they go with next gen. I hope they retain kind of this feel. I hope they do more of that. Number 7 for me is Luigi's Mansion 3, and yep, that's the last of the Nintendo titles. Spoiler, this one was my favorite of the bunch. It's shocking to me that more from their 2019 arsenal did not make my list, but I don't know. Times are changing. I still love Nintendo. I can't wait for Super Nintendo World to open in Tokyo. That's kind of my big goal for 2020, is to make it over there for the first time in my life for a really good reason. That park and those rides look insane. But Luigi's Mansion 3 capitalized on Nintendo's charm in a way that they haven't really tackled all that often. It's a linear single-player title. Do you get the drift of what I like here? Okay. I really appreciate that they gave you a big hotel to explore and so much level of variety. You can see their creativity just oozing through every door. You open it up and you get to witness Remarkable game design. I love when the designers design for you. Sandboxes are fun, but I was never a sandbox kid. I much more enjoyed a game or a movie or a sport because there was a goal and a purpose, and you got to experience that. It's so much more fun to witness someone's artistry, their creativity, their genius, and to be a part of it, for me at least. So Luigi's Mansion 3, Luigi is probably, in that game, he's probably the best animated Nintendo character of all time. So much personality, and it feels like it is, you know what, when we played Mario way back in the day, when we played Nintendo titles, this is where we hoped they'd get. This level of visual fidelity, this level of fun, this level of the mannerisms, the emotion, the creativity, the diversity, it's all there. I think the gameplay is a little last gen, that vacuum mechanic, it works, but it doesn't feel all that fluid. I wish Nintendo would try their hand at something a little more modern era, and I know that they won't, and for them Breath of the Wild was that game, which I did enjoy, but Luigi's Mansion 3, I don't know, I found that incredibly fun, and I hope Nintendo is able to grab me more in 2020. It feels weird to not be hooked by them, but I wasn't that much in 2019, and I wonder what kind of game it's going to take to return. Like I said, I like games that make a mark on me, and I feel like Nintendo games are fun for the sake of fun. I don't know, maybe I need to have more fun in 2020. Maybe that's a goal I'll make, and maybe then I will enjoy more of Nintendo's offerings. But let's move to number 6, which is a title I'm surprised isn't on anyone's Game of the Year list. How could Borderlands 3 not make it for most people? This is a phenomenal return for Gearbox and for the Borderlands franchise. I'm not some uber Borderlands fan. I don't have the masks up on my wall, but I do love shooters, and this is a fantastic shooter. They're hitting the spot, right? It's bringing in things from the past of a single player game with a lot of linear missions, but there's still multiplayer, right? They still are going from planet to planet. It is a big, bombastic, bold adventure, which retains the things that we loved about last gen game design. I'm shocked that this isn't more popular. The game sold insanely well. I know it had some pretty problematic issues, especially early on in terms of frame rate and how that thing ran. Luckily, I played it on PC, and for whatever reason, my 5-year-old PC ran it perfectly. I guess I just lucked out with the build I've got. But I found this to be fantastic, and the shooting feels so good. It's so satisfying to go through that loop of just unload on everyone, take them all out, get new gear, put that new gear in, unload on the next engagement, the next arena, and then repeat and find new enemies and find new pairings for your character and upgrade and be able to use multiple skills. Holy cow, we finally entered an era where multiple skills make sense. Goodness gracious sakes alive. I think Borderlands 3 is awesome. If you haven't played it, you can probably grab it cheap. It doesn't jump out at you as a game that, oh my god, it's, saying something, or oh my god, it has the greatest visuals ever, or oh my god, everyone and their friends are playing for 5,000 hours. It kind of just does what it does super well, and it's sad to me that in 2019 that wasn't put on a pedestal. That's not loved. It's like a game needs to be something that you do as a job, or that becomes an eternal hobby for it to succeed. It needs to have a battle pass, and it needs to involve you and your 1,800 online friends, and I don't think there's no father of gaming like there is a father of Disney. But when I look at what Walt Disney, the company, has become, I imagine that Walt himself is rolling over in his grave. And if there was a father in gaming, I think that they would feel maybe similar. That, man, I don't know that games are meant to be this insane, do it all, play it forever experience. I get that it's making oodles of money for companies, and more power to them. But it's a sign of the times that Borderlands 3 is as good as it is and didn't get more love. I don't even like the humor. I'm not even into the humor at all. But when the gameplay is that crispy and the amount of action is that consistent, the variety that cool, you go to a freaking dinosaur world? Come on, guys. It's a good game. Number 5 is Control. Ooh, this one hurts. Well, it doesn't hurt because I'm so proud of Remedy. I'm so proud of the team over there. I got to know them pretty well this year, and they're such good people, and they had so much passion and so much drive behind this title. It is a AAA game that did not have a massive amount of money. They came in and swept so many Game of the Year awards, And that to me is so impressive because it is the kind of game that I love. Here is one where it is getting the recognition. And I'm not sure what makes Control gain those kind of accolades and not some of the others. Maybe it's that it got a lot of push from the critics and the reviewer scene. Maybe it's that it just does things very differently. It's got a really good hook. That oldest house, the mystery, the intrigue. I think mystery still is something that games far too often avoid and don't utilize. Like, dude, thrillers are popular for a reason. And games, they can't, I don't know, either the writing's not good enough to have an intriguing mystery, they don't have enough ideas for twists and turns, or they'd rather focus on building out the ability to have 100 hours of gameplay, so you can't really have a mystery or twist or turns because it has to last forever, and you can't just do a tight-knit experience like Control. What holds Control back for me is the fact that they kind of give you everything so early, and I feel like the gameplay does get a bit stale as you progress. The ending, it doesn't ramp in the way that I would have expected. Maybe a few more powers here or there, and perhaps that's indicative of the budget, or perhaps that's indicative of the game they wanted to create. I also just wasn't as big of a fan of the oldest house as other people. I don't know. To me, the environment wasn't as appealing. Like, I prefer Alan Wake's city, town, over Control's oldest house. That's just, I guess, apples and oranges. You like what you like, and that's fine. I still think what they did with Control is exceptional, and I still think the storyline and the creativity, the world building, the ideas, all the notes, the stories, the little pickups, the audio logs, those are awesome. More audio logs, please. More interesting writing. Make it feel like I'm part of a universe that has existed for 1,000,000 years. Make it feel like I'm part of a movie. Not like you just wrote some details. We don't need to just know about this person or this animal or this enemy. Like, I love when it's so baked into the world. The stories you find in Control make you believe that the world of Control is real. You jack into that matrix and it hooks you. I think the gameplay is incredibly polished. It's the best that Remedy's done. And the fact that they were able to do it with 505 games and not with some massive Microsoft-backed budget, really impressive. Can't wait to see where they go from here. Alan Wake 2, please, baby. I think they're a phenomenal studio, and with Ken Levine, MIA, and with so many studios and their creative powerhouses kind of either going the indie route or moving to the background, it's good to see someone step up and say, hey, we have a vision, we have a passion, and we're going to execute, and we're going to nail it, and it's going to be successful. I don't know how well Control sold. I'm sure it did solid, but it's so good to see it winning. It's so good to see it winning over and over again. And while it doesn't win for me, it still was a very fun time. And I think I just had insane expectations for the game. I wanted it to be my next BioShock, and it wasn't. Number 4 is Resident Evil 2 Remake. Goodness gracious, another game that surprised me. I didn't think I would like this one all that much. I'm not the hugest RE fan, and I loved 7. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that I wasn't excited for a remake. I wanted them to push the ideas and the roaming boss mentality of 7 into 8, and instead they gave us 2 Remake. But I love 2 Remake. It's so good. Beating the drum again of bringing back game design philosophy from yesteryear and nailing it. I guess it's quite interesting that Link's Awakening, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Luigis Mansion, Control, Borderlands, these games come from a time long ago. They aren't The Division 2. They aren't Red Dead Redemption 2. They aren't Apex Legends. They're not games that are doing things with the 2019 trends. They're doing things to buck those trends. And I guess I'm getting old because I like that. I welcome and I try. Like, Anthem was something I was insanely excited about, and it just didn't do it. And I know I'm not the only one. It didn't do it for a lot of people, and I bet there's a bunch of you out there that agree and don't feel that strongly about these big open world, online only, play with all your friends and kind of forget about listening to the story games. For me, that's not video games. For me, that's a distraction. I don't like time wasters. Anyhow, Resident Evil 2 Remake uses its time very well, and once Mr. X arrives, you are panicking till the very end. I love the narrow corridors, the tight design of the mansion, the way they utilize every room. Every shot counts, and the fact that they move to the third-person perspective with nice controls instead of old Resident Evil controls. You go back and play some of those old games, it's pretty hard after RE2 Remake. So I sit here insanely excited for RE3 Remake, where a year ago, before I played Resident Evil 2, I would have said, goodness gracious, please no, Capcom. I'm sure eventually we'll get 8, and I'm sure it will really build on what 7 brought in terms of these environments that you are always at risk in, and the creative ideas. The first half of the game, the second half was much more traditional RE, but the first half was so forward-thinking, I thought. It was so creative, and I'm sure we'll get there, but right now I am jonesing for RE3 Remake. I'm excited to try out the multiplayer component. One more of these. We don't need to do it every year, but 2 years in a row, let's do it. Run it back. Resident Evil 2 was a ton of fun, and it felt like a good old game with gorgeous visuals. Such a pretty, beautiful game, and such a nice experience that I played from start to finish. All right, here's where my list gets weird and deviates from the public. Number 3 for me is SteamWorld Quest. Some of you may not even know what this game is. It comes from Image & Form, one of my favorite design houses. They have moved up the ranks to the level of Irrational Games for me. Since Irrational isn't a thing, I have to find new studios to fall in love with, and Image & Form are one of them. From SteamWorld Dig to SteamWorld Heist to SteamWorld Quest, they kill it. Quest may be my favorite of all. I was hooked. It is a card battler. It is a game where you build a deck via acquiring characters, and there's always something new. They are always upping the ante on the mechanics and the characters. They don't just say, hey, here's a random deck, go. They don't just say, hey, here's 2 characters, get to know them. I love Slay the Spire a lot, but SteamWorld Quest for me does it because it has a story. It does have acquisition of characters. There's a lot of different variety, and of course Slay the Spire has tons of variety, but I prefer the variety in the way that Quest does it because you get to know it, you build on it, and I feel like there's more personal choice because it isn't using the roguelike mechanics. It is using a linear campaign set of mechanics. I love the characters. I think they're charming. I think the world is really impressive. Some of the moving around the battlefield and kind of this old school room-to-room style, maybe that isn't the best, but there's still stuff to find. I love acquiring the cards, seeing what they could do when you combo them, when you double them, when you upgrade them. You have a lot of choice. You have a lot of input in how your deck works. There's a lot of player involvement in building this, and I love that. You get to decide, and you get to make your lineup. Enough characters to really impress, some really tough fights. This is one of those games that I got sick when it released, and it made the whole week fly by. For me, experience is a lot of it, and maybe that played into it. Maybe if I wasn't sick that week, maybe I wouldn't have just gunned from start to finish through SteamWorld Quest, but I did. The 25 hours flew by. Oh, the game is so good. I take a SteamWorld Quest too. I'll take whatever Image & Form does. They are my favorite, I think, indie developer at the moment, and I'm so glad to see them succeed. And SteamWorld Quest is one of the only physical games I have from this year, which is hilarious because you wouldn't expect it. But it is a resounding success of an indie, and in a lot of ways, it has better gameplay and better design than AAA. If you haven't played SteamWorld Quest, it's on sale right now. It's fantastic. I don't know. Maybe you don't like it if you're not a card game fan. Maybe it's something that just fits my age bracket because I grew up with Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. It's not even so much that, though. It's just the battle system is unique and creative. The way that they limit what you can do on a turn, I just think they nailed it. They had a perfect idea. And each card is unique, and each card is, the art is, it's, okay. So it's shocking to say that number 2 is another Switch indie. How could something top SteamWorld Quest when I loved it so much? Well, it's because Katana Zero is a masterpiece. I love Celeste. Katana Zero is right up there. I think Katana Zero is one of the best Switch games, and we're talking about a lineup that includes Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, Fire Emblem Three Houses. This game is fantastic, and it's made by one dude. It has a wacko storyline. You want to talk about mystery and maybe even indecipherable story? Well, this has it. It gets so weird with time travel and murder. It is a gruesome game, both in the gameplay and in the cutscenes. There's a therapist you speak to. It's got emotionality in a one-hit kill title. This game should just be about one-hit kills and making perfect runs and speed running and feeling good about that. But it's more. It does the Celeste thing where it takes a 2D pixel art based game mechanic and then loads this story and this experience on top to really bring it into the 2019 era and do something remarkable and do something that sets it apart. And the fact that it's made by one dude just impresses the heck out of me. I love how good you feel after you get a perfect run through a room. And I love how the controls just kind of meld with your body and your hands just know what to do. It's symphonic in the way that you move through these levels and master the few attacks that you have, the dodges, the bullet reflection. It's so cool. And your character is troubled and tortured, and yet it's vibrant and neon, and the levels are crazy. The boss battles are so insane. There's characters that keep haunting you again and again. What's really going on here? So not only are you enamored with the gameplay, but you're intrigued by the story. It does a remarkable combo. It blends together. And I said I didn't like blends, but this is a blend that isn't trying to... It's building on what's there versus expanding or stretching, rather. So games that stretch, games that try to do more versus games that layer. I don't know. I think that's a differentiation, and maybe it's hard for me to verbalize, but when a game layers upon itself and builds upon what it has and supplements versus trying to stretch and do more in a different way, it's enhancing what's there. And maybe that's the difference between a masterful designer and an amateur designer or a pretty good designer. But Katana Zero, you got to play it. That's like a must play. I don't care if you have a Switch or a PC, you can play it there. It is a must freaking play. I think there's more DLC coming, which I'm pumped for. I don't know. Of all the games this year, even though it's not number one for me, I think Katana Zero is the one I'd say you gotta play. It's like when Inside came out, like you gotta play Inside. You gotta play Katana Zero. All right, that brings us to number one. Can you guess what it is? Do you know what it is? I bet a lot of you are thinking it's Sekiro. Oh, it's not. Unfortunately. Number one for me is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I've been waiting for this game all year. I was very worried about it. The E3 presentation sucked. They didn't really show what the game was, and yet the game comes out and Respawn does it again. What a resounding success story that studio is. They have killed every game they've come out with and basically created their own IP. I know Star Wars is obviously utilizing a monster IP, but they created a new character, a new storyline, a new world within, and a new type of game. This is an explorative Metroidvania with Dark Souls combat and linear level design. It's so wonderful. It's open, but it's not. Like, if this was open world, I think it would suffer. But it has massive worlds that have paths. It's like arteries, right? It's like the planets are a beating heart, and you get to travel down the different arteries. Each time you return, there's a new one opened up. And they can interlink and they can cross paths, but it's not just like a big open bleh that you go hunt. And yeah, the collectibles aren't that great. I personally love building my lightsaber and getting different parts and pieces. That for me was a lot of fun, but I understand how maybe that's not rewarding and perhaps they could have done more. But also when you explore, you build XP and that allows you to expand your character. And while I thought Cal was one of the worst character designs of the year when I first saw him, I kind of grew to like him. And your little droid is amazing. One of my favorite new characters of the generation, I think. I love him. He's way better than Dio. I wish there was more merch from him. BD1 is awesome. I love him. And the fact that you can customize his color, the ship color, the characters are pretty good. I still think Respawn needs to work on their facial animation a bit. Maybe take some lessons from Naughty Dog or something. But anyhow, it's a beautiful game. The worlds are diverse. I love the combat. I feel like I didn't love the combat as much as I wish, and that's what holds this back from being like an all-time favorite, a game of the decade for me. Instead, it's just game of the year, but that's still pretty darn impressive. And the story was engaging. The boss battles were awesome. It is the embodiment of being a lightsaber wielder. It has the best Star Wars combat ever. I don't know how anyone could say that they like another Star Wars game more. This one is fantastic. It gives you the story. It gives you the exploration. It gives you the Jedi powers. It gives you the growth. It gives you the lightsaber battles. It gives you the Sith. It's so good. It's so freaking good in every way. It starts off with some like Uncharted style scenes where you feel like, oh, maybe it's going to be pretty darn linear, and then it blows open with the different planets, and then you can pick the planets and then go back and forth. And there's a way to sort of circumvent the natural order and grab the double-bladed saber early. The bounty hunters come in, and it's not even 100% clear if that's scripted or not, but it's not, and they're fighting you, and that's such an idea from Star Wars that they translated into a mechanic. I love calling that one out because it's like they took something from the franchise, right? And they found a way to make it make sense in a smart game design choice. It's brilliant. I tried to go most of the game without upgrading my Estus flask, my stim pack, and I had to bite the bullet once I fought the outsider because he was so difficult. I loved how difficult he was. I did not like that the stim pack boost was what pushed me over the edge. I mean, I still had to beat him with my skills, but going from 2 stim packs to 6 really made a huge difference. I kind of wish that they would have found a way to make combat more manageable given your moveset rather than your health pack. And maybe I just wasn't the best at the game, but I feel like after so many Dark Souls style games, I have a pretty good grasp on this kind of combat. I will say it limited me because I wanted to do dodge, parry, and I used the force powers less than I would have liked. I wish this game would get DLC. It doesn't sound like it will, but single player DLC, I'd be all over because then I've learned so much. I want to go back and I want to play it with more utilization of the force. I'd love to see Cal's force powers grow and expand. You know, you can't have 10 force powers, but it'd be so interesting if they made a sequel. Do they decide to go with a different character and let you grow that character from beginning to end, or do they take Cal and let you build on what is already there? Do they go the dark side route? I'd love to see them tackle a Sith character and kind of flip the script a bit for the next one. I don't know, the sound design is excellent. The graphics are beautiful. It's a wonderful game that I had a ton of fun with, and it's one of those games I did not want to stop playing, and that tells me something. It tells me that this is special, at least to me. I don't want to put it down because it's very easy for me to put things down. It's very easy for me to forget about them, come back later, never come back. Jedi Fallen Order, I rushed through because I loved it. That boss battle with the bat is incredible. I love that they scale so well. You got the big foes and you got the little guys, and both are fun, right? It's like Monster Hunter World all of a sudden, and then before you know it, it's back to fighting a lightsaber battle. So cool. You got some moments that call to fans very well, but it stayed in its lane. I love that it didn't try to do like, oh my god, everything connects, every character makes sense. It still tried to craft its own world while falling into the greater Star Wars universe. For me, it was a phenomenal Star Wars year, and funnily enough, the things that people love most, I liked the least. Mandalorian and Galaxy's Edge were okay, but I loved the movie and I loved the game. I thought it closed out the decade for Star Wars in phenomenal fashion. And, you know, this is a gamer's game. It's tricky. It asks a lot of you. And it feels old, and that's so weird to say that Control feels old and Borderlands 3 feels old and Jedi Fallen Order feels old because they're new, they're brand new, but we've gone away from this kind of game, and I hope that 2020 brings it back. I'd love if some of these titles, some of my favorites, got DLC. I've been waiting for God of War single player DLC since the day it came out. It's probably not going to happen. Same probably be true of Jedi Fallen Order. We are getting more Control DLC, which is good. Borderlands 3 continues to pump out the DLC. Resident Evil 2 isn't getting DLC, but it is getting Resident Evil 3. So there's a lot to love, and there's a lot even in a, for me, weak year, and even in a kind of low year for gaming, still a strong list of 10 that I love talking about and love sharing with you. I'm going to try to do more of that in 2020, focus on the fun, and focus on sharing that with you, and being the Ghost Robo and the guy that you guys remember. You know, if we're talking about these games that are coming from the past to bring their greatness to the modern era, let me try to do that for you and for this channel. We found a foothold with Evolve and brought that back, and I can't wait to see what great games come out next year and which ones I'll fall in love with and can bring my enthusiasm, my creativity, my mark to for the channel and for you all. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks for watching this long video. I didn't intend for it to be 30 minutes, but here we are. I love just talking like this, and you know, I guess I should stop trying to be like everybody else and just do what makes sense for me. And that's what I did with this list. That's why it's a Jedi Fallen Order, Katana Zero, SteamWorld Quest top 3. Who would have thunk? Probably only me. But I love the games. Once more, Card of Darkness, Zelda Link's Awakening, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Luigis Mansion 3, Borderlands 3, Control, Resident Evil 2 Remake, SteamWorld Quest, Katana Zero, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. There you have it. That's 2019. Boom. Close the door on a year and on a decade. Next year is going to be insane. The current gen lineup with Cyberpunk, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Last of Us 2, Avengers. It's absurd. And then there's next gen waiting in the fall, which you know I cannot wait for. So it's going to be a big one, and I can't wait to share with you. Thanks so much. Let me know your comments and thoughts in the comments down below. What are your favorite games? What do you think of my list? Hit that like button if you enjoyed the year and are excited for 2020. It's going to be so weird to write it. It looks so big. The twos make it so big. It's like a long date. But it hopefully will be a long, lovely year. Better for everybody, right? Better for everybody. Health, happiness, and wonder across the world. Hopefully we can be a little kinder to each other. Hopefully we can get some better games. Until next time, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Hope you're having a fantastic day. I love you all a lot. Drink some hot chocolate once more for the last time in 2019. And until next time, we will see you all later.